everyone. Welcome back to Soul Sessions. My name is Alex. It's a pleasure to connect with you again. In our 10th episode here on the podcast, my plan was to originally share about a pretty big milestone in my professional development and chat in more detail about graduating and embarking upon my journey as a new marriage and family therapist. That was the plan. But with everything going on, both locally, nationally, and internationally, it feels downright offensive to minimize the overwhelming tragedies we are facing every day. So I'd like to take the time today to speak on what is occurring in Los Angeles specifically and what is coming up for me. I understand that this approach may not resonate with some listeners who are here solely for conversations about mental health, but this is mental health. Political activism and advocacy for people who are suffering is mental health. And I urge anyone with a platform, however big or small, to use it as a space for sharing information, accurate information, and raise awareness and solidarity. Over the past week, there have been unlawful, egregious, and downright disgusting raids of local communities throughout Los Angeles by ICE, also known as Immigration and Customs Enforcement. These raids come at the hands of President Trump's latest order, but under his overarching umbrella of forceful and aggressive immigration deportations. ICE officers often show up masked, unidentifiable, and downright cruel, ripping families apart, refusing to disclose to individuals the reasons why they are being detained, which is an illegal action by any authority. There are no laws being followed, it seems, and as a result, the city of Los Angeles has gathered and pushed back in resistance to what is being done. I have lived in Los Angeles for approximately 3 years now. Much like most of America, Los Angeles is built by immigrants, not just in the past, but now, in the present, in this very moment. It has never occurred to me to hate the Spanish that is spoken here, or to devalue or stigmatize the Latino communities, to see them as anything separate. It is what makes this city so rich and full of culture. The resilience that you need in order to make it in Los Angeles is reflected in every single immigrant who has fought life for a chance at a better one. What is happening in LA now is not new. Countless protests and raids are happening throughout the nation. And it hurts me because I am an immigrant myself. My culture may be different, but only in shades. I've come to believe that every immigrant, regardless of where they call home, holds a very similar story. Leaving your home, leaving your roots, this is not a choice that you make lightly. It is born out of a desperation, out of a need to seek safety, knowing that reaching that safety will jeopardize it at the same time. I moved to the States in the 4th grade. I watched my parents learn English through a dictionary. I saw them work from sunup to sundown at jobs that no one else wanted, in words that they didn't understand, because that's what needed to be done for a better life. A life that no one would guarantee, but a risk that needed to be taken. My family came here legally, but it wasn't because we just followed the rules. We were one of the lucky ones. And it doesn't happen for everyone. And God knows the process of legalization has always been a mountain to climb, even 20 years ago when we were going through the process. This administration will tell you that the mass deportations serve the purpose of cleansing the nation of gangs and crime and drugs and corruption. But all I see are deportations of fathers and mothers and hardworking people, children ripped out of schools and graduation ceremonies. This is not a war against crime, and I beg you to see that. There are over 600,000 illegal immigrants in this country who come from Europe, who are just like me, white. These are people who have come here for their own reasons, in pursuit of their own peace or happiness. They overstayed their visas, never went home, decided to risk it and fly under the radar, hoping to make it for themselves and their families. The difference between these people and who you see on your TV screens and news feeds or getting picked up at Home Depot parking lots is evident and clear. And I need you to see that too. There is tremendous resilience that is needed when you decide to leave your old life behind in search of something better, knowing damn well that you will work yourself to the bone to achieve that sense of better. This resilience gets us through every challenge and obstacle, this one included, but it does come with a cost. When I talk about mental health on this podcast, I talk about it from the lens of wholeness. I talk about it as it impacts every aspect of our life because mental health is every aspect of our life. There is no part of me that sees what is happening around us as separate from our mental well-being. And I will not seclude myself or my voice on the off chance that this raises political questions. What is happening is not a political debate. It is a human and systemic clash where we are being asked to zoom out our perspective and reflect on what we see with wider eyes. I understand that this poses a tremendous challenge for most of us. We are conditioned to blame and point a finger because somewhere in the equation of cause and effect, another must be at fault. That is how we understand our world, us versus them, good versus evil. For millennia, we have followed the structures and paradigms set forth by our overarching powers, and through laws, we have understood and defined and embodied what it means to have order and live by it. Without it, we succumb to chaos. We have grown and lived by the mantra that if we follow suit, the positive result of abiding by the rules will grace us. And if everyone did the same and fell into the assembly line of following order, then order is what we will have. But what we are learning now, and quite possibly what our forefathers and ancestors have always known, is that laws are never neutral. And they don't nearly as often protect the people like they do the bottom line. Capitalism and patriarchy, individualistic versus collectivistic societies, these are all concepts and realities that paint a much fuller picture of how we function together as a human race. I implore you to get curious about all of it, to sink your teeth into it and learn from these concepts because they dictate so much of how we think and why some of us see the tragedies in our communities and fall in line with the dictatorial order. Where there is power, there is a fine line in justifying abuse of that power. I'm going to say that again. Where there is power, there is a fine line in justifying abuse of that power. It happens far more often than we think, and it has always happened when we spend our time and attention blaming the individual and not the system itself. If you're following the protests in Los Angeles or attending any, I want to stress the following. It is very easy to be misled by what is shown in the media. I urge you to question what you see and what you follow. There is a very big difference between a riot and a protest. I also urge you to pause and reflect when you notice yourself jumping to conclusions or following the trend of someone else's conclusions, especially with limited information or misinformation. If you are locally attending the protests, please bring protection. This includes gloves, safety glasses, gas masks, first aid kits, as well as water. It is incredibly easy to let our anger get the best of us. We want to hit back. We want to push against, to rage and yell until our throats are sore. Most of us feel this rage deep in our bones, and there is power in letting it strategize our approach to supporting communities and people who are at the mercy of the government. Only you know the threshold of your own anger. Don't let it empty you without furthering your cause. I will share some local resources in the description of this episode in order to help promote accurate information, as well as accurate legal direction and consideration if you or someone you know has been deported or threatened with deportation. I will end with this short story and reminder. A couple of years ago, I traveled to Poland during March of the Living and visited Auschwitz, one of the deadliest concentration camps during World War II. Now, what made World War II was so complex and unforgiving wasn't just Hitler's regime or the Holocaust. It was the subtle yet firm rhetoric and narrative that became louder over time, in which communities and demographics of people were becoming seen as other, as different, as less than, as unworthy, as criminal. Over time, the masses of German and Polish people began to fall in line, adopting this rhetoric, perhaps without even fully knowing what they were agreeing to. And sooner than later, neighbors who were once friends and countrymen and allies became someone to fear, someone to point the finger at and blame, someone to nod in agreement as they were taken away to Auschwitz. Tragedy gains momentum when we fall in line with thinking that is not our own. I beg you to question what you see, what you hear, and who you follow, because history always repeats itself. And if we are destined to return to our lesson, may it be with kinder eyes this time. Thank you for listening.